Oh, look, Doctor Strange 2 got banned in some countries because it has gay characters. This is my surprised face. For the second time, a Doctor Strange movie opens with controversy. When the first one dropped back in 2016, it got some heat over the casting of the Ancient One. In the comics, the Ancient One is a 500-year-old Tibetan badass. In the film, they made him a white woman. Now, I love me some Tilda Swinton. She's a fantastic actress, and while I haven't seen the film, I'm sure she did a good job in the role. I've never seen her be bad in a movie. However, the change was really weird because this was 2016, and Marvel Comics was at the height of its diversity and inclusion initiative, and Marvel Studios was starting to follow suit. If you're all about representation, why would you turn an Asian man into a white woman? Marvel Studios' response at the time was to claim that they were trying to avoid the Asian wise man stereotype. From Screen Rant, quote, "When director Scott Derrickson set out to adapt Doctor Strange for the big screen, he knew he wanted to make the Ancient One a woman, to place a female character in a powerful position of Sorcerer Supreme. However, he thought that if he chose an Asian woman to play this role, the Ancient One would come too close to embodying the Dragon Lady stereotype. The Dragon Lady trope describes an East Asian female character who is mysterious, strong-willed, and duplicitous. Derrickson ended up crafting the role specifically with Tilda Swinton in mind, as the actress's androgyny and ethereal presence would add to the Ancient One's enigmatic nature. Now, if that sounds like bullshit, that's because it is. The mystical Oriental trope Marvel Studios claims it wanted to avoid could easily have been avoided by not playing on the trope. And to be fair, I'm not that familiar with the character of the Ancient One, so I don't know how far writers went into that stereotype. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that they went balls to the wall. The simplest solution is to not do that in the films. Just because a character has been a stereotype before doesn't mean you can't change that for the movie. After all, you're changing tons of other character and story elements. You could easily change this, and I doubt anyone outside of uber purists and the bigot brigade would even complain. But of course, that's not really the reason they did it. Again from Screen Rant, quote, "Screenwriter C. Robert Cargill gave a more blunt reason, saying the character's race was changed to avoid alienating the Chinese government by acknowledging Tibet's statehood, but he later retracted these statements." So he accidentally told the truth. This had nothing to do with avoiding stereotypes, and everything to do with the conflict between China and Tibet. Tibet claims to be a sovereign state before China invaded it in the 1950s, and China claims, "Nah, son, we always owned you." China's had a scorched earth policy about this, committing numerous human rights abuses, but if you're a movie studio, none of that matters to you. You just want China's money. So if the Chinese government no likey Tibetans in movies, you make them all old Celtic women, and then 5 years later, long after you got all the money, you claim that you made the wrong decision. Shortly before Shang-Chi came out, Kevin Feige said in a Men's Health interview, quote, "We thought we were being so smart, so cutting edge. We're not going to do the cliche of the wizened, old, wise Asian man." But it was a wake-up call to say, well, wait a minute, is there any other way to figure it out? Is there any other way to both not fall into the cliche and cast an Asian actor? And the answer to that, of course, is yes. And yet you didn't do that. I mean, you could have just as easily made the Ancient One Chinese. You could have made him a reformed Pai Mei. There's so many things you could have done that you didn't do because you wanted that China money so bad you shut off your creative brains. But after all of that, you think that now Feige and Marvel Studios would have learned. There's been enough controversy around films, enough instances of films being edited or banned because something in them offended somebody, that Marvel Studios could just avoid doing that. But no. It looks like several Middle Eastern countries have banned Doctor Strange 2 because there's a lesbian in it. From CBR, quote, "Egypt and Kuwait have become the latest nations to ban Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness from theaters, owing to its inclusion of America Chavez, an openly gay character. IMAX Egypt announced on social media that the film will no longer be playing in that region." And here's the tweet, quote, "Doctor Strange and Wanda will not be here during their journey between universes. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness won't be released in Egypt." And look, there's my thumbnail. Thanks, now I don't have to make one. I like how they took the time to arrange cancel to make it look like Wanda's conjuring it up. Now, of course, this is not a surprise because Egypt is a very anti-gay country, and it's obvious they banned the film. Saudi Arabia also banned the film, and it appears Kuwait might have, although it's not confirmed as of the making of this video. CBR goes on to state, quote, "Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Kuwait each possess some form of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. In Saudi Arabia, punishment for same-sex acts, cross-dressing, or simply being transgender ranges from fines to imprisonment and even the death penalty. And if you heard a tiny thunk, that's just a bigot brigade popping wood over the Middle East being based. I'm told that every time Saudi Arabia chucks a gay kid off a roof, a drunk lawyer goes, swing! CBR goes on to mention that similar laws and abuses occur in Egypt, and that Marvel Studios previously had to edit the internals because of the openly gay characters in that movie. They removed all the scenes showing or mentioning gay characters, and I suspect that's what they'll do here. However, this presents a problem for Marvel Studios because the more they want to depict these characters, the more prominent the roles those characters will play in their films, and they're going to get to a point where there's no amount of editing that's going to get rid of the haram content. You'll have to butcher the film to try to edit it out. At this point, you already know certain countries will get pissy about the existence of gay characters, or prominence of certain races, or the mention of certain religions. If you want to include those concepts in your films, you're going to have to grow a spine. If you know the film is going to be banned, don't send it to them. I mean, it's Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Kuwait. You make more money in an opening night in Chicago than you do for the film's entire run in those countries combined. You're not losing cash by not playing to them. You're owned by Disney, a multi-billion-dollar company. They probably just lost those countries' total gross of the last MCU film in the time it took me to say that sentence. That's millions of dollars, more money than anyone listening to this will ever see, and it's just a blip to you. It probably costs you more to edit the film than you make from those countries, so what are you doing? You've exhausted the virtue signal. The batteries are dead. They can't be recharged. It's done. If you're gonna have the lesbian in your film, defend it. If you're gonna make a big deal out of it, about how you have a representation, then defend it. But if you're not going to defend it, then don't do it. Because way too many of your upcoming projects are going to be like this, and it's not going to stop. You're either for it or you're not. Now, for some inexplicable reason, CBR quoted Joe Casey, one of the creators of America Chavez. I say inexplicable because there's nothing in the article justifying talking to him. They just seem to drop this quote, but since it's about identity politics, I thought I'd talk about it. Joe Casey says, quote, "This certainly isn't unique to America Chavez, but I've always thought that our superhero fiction should, in some very fundamental way, reflect our own reality. Unlike the Marvel Universe that was originally seen in the early 1960s comics, our current reality is multicultural. So more recently created Marvel characters like America Chavez and Miles Morales and Kamala Khan not only reflect the world of 2022, they seem to have connected with a section of fandom that, in one way or another, strongly identify with them. And who are those people? I'm asking because all three of those characters have had their books canceled for low sales at some point. There's definitely a group of people who like to talk about them on social media, post fan art, maybe cosplay as them. But when it comes to the thing that matters, spending money on the characters' books and merch, that isn't happening. These characters weren't just created, they've been around for about a decade, and yet they still haven't gotten over. Kamala Khan isn't particularly popular, virtually no one knows who America Chavez is, although that'll change with the film, and Miles Morales is known by his real name, not his superhero name. That doesn't mean that people don't like these characters. Every time I mention this, some fan pops into the comments to tell me that they like Miles or Kamala or whoever. I'm not literally saying no one likes them. I'm just making a general observation. The characters don't seem to be as popular as people claim. And after 10 years of them being around, I don't think you can blame this on specific creative teams anymore. I think it's fair to say that there's something about these characters themselves that just doesn't bring it out of people. There's something that they're lacking that makes them less interesting than other characters. I think that comes down to these characters being about reflecting our own reality instead of being about who they are as people. When you listen to the people who say they identify with these characters, the connection is superficial. This person looks like me. This person believes like me. This person loves like me. But that's it. There's nothing else to attract anyone. So once the novelty wears off, people lose interest. And then it doesn't matter if someone tries to tell a good story because no one stuck around for it. And that's the risk that Marvel Studios is taking by trying to make the failed all-new, all-different 2017 comic book line into the next phase of the MCU. If they're not going to add any substance to these characters, if they're just going to check boxes, the issue won't be the money. The MCU films are going to draw a bank for a while just off the residual hype. But the audience's emotional investment and excitement is going to change because they're not really interested in superficial virtue signaling. We just saw this with the last Spider-Man movie, and we're seeing it with Doctor Strange too. There's more interest in what previously established characters from completely different franchises will appear in the film than anything for America Chavez. Making Falcon Captain America was hot for 2 minutes and then people dropped it. If you shit on Thor in his new movie the way Jason Aaron did in the comics, you're gonna piss off a lot of people. It's still got to be fun, and that was lost in that shift to playing identity politics in the comics. They could have made all those changes, and they could have worked if the stories were fun, if they'd invested the audience in the characters, and if decisions weren't made out of spite. I can't say for certain that's what's going to happen with the new MCU films, but judging by what's happened in WandaVision and then The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I can't put it past them. A lot of the problems of those shows seem to be people lacking knowledge about the characters and being sloppy with the writing, but there were some identity politics at play. Nothing to break either show, but enough to leave some marks. We'll have to see how this goes because Marvel Studios can't have it both ways. They can't try to play politics and avoid trying to get their films and shows banned. They're gonna have to pick one. It's just a question of which one will they choose and how will they choose to do it. Unfortunately, it's not looking good. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.